Mr. Bassil, pleasure to speak to you today.
Welcome.
You don't need an introduction, so I'll keep it short. You were the Minister of Telecommunications, the Minister of Energy and Water, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and a current MP. It's a pleasure to speak to you. You don't do many interviews, so it's a pleasure to speak to you here in your home. I want to start off with something we were discussing just upstairs earlier, and I was talking about the perception of the world when it comes to Lebanon, which is in a state of war, at least in the southern border. But you showed me a project you were working on, and then others were telling me about nightlife in Lebanon. Can you tell me more about the sentiment here, your sentiment, your level of concern, when, in many people's eyes, the country's at brink of war right now, full-blown war?
You know, one aspect of the uniqueness of Lebanon is that the Lebanese are survivors. Very, very high level of resilience. And we fight to survive and to live happily, let's say. I know how much in tension we are, but we always manage to stand up and continue our life.
My other way of looking at this, when you started showing me the project, I'm like, obviously you've got more information than the average person in Lebanon, considering your position and the leader of one of the biggest political parties in the country. So I'm like, if you're working on a project and you seem peaceful about it and that was behind the scenes, not on camera, I'm like, is that maybe an indication that things are not as bad as people make it out to be? I've interviewed other people today and it was a lot more alarming. The concern was a lot higher. Or are you still very concerned, but you got to do business as usual, as you said?
Yes, we are. It's normal that we are concerned. But always we look positively forward. And if we want to do a risk management for every project we do, we end up doing nothing.
I've heard that before.
So we take the risk and we do. And the country, against all odds, scientifically, this country should be dead economically. But look, it's living.
You don't
because we have a determination to continue on living in dignity and to preserve the well-being of the Lebanese, despite all the fears that we have from the future and all our past experience, full of conflicts, wars, too much things that can depress the Lebanese. Imagine a whole country, a whole population, who lost all its money in the banks and still working and surviving and living, going out at night, at day, we are a vibrant country, a vibrant society, and we are determined to live well.
But, sir, there's a breaking point. The country's just been through so much, and ignore the decades of war. Civil war, war with neighboring countries. The currency's collapsed, the banking system has no trust, people have their money stuck in the banks. COVID, the explosion, and now essentially being in a state of war. No direct war with Israel, but obviously the second military in Lebanon, Hezbollah, is in war with Israel. How much more can the country take? And when do you begin to say, hold on, maybe I should stop these projects? Things now they've crossed the line. Where is that line for you?
Okay, already we are beyond what you mentioned. If you want to add to the list, I can add a lot more. One example, 2.5 million refugees and displaced Syrians and Palestinians, which is above 60% of our population. They are in the country. The highest density of immigrants in the world, 250 immigrants per square kilometer, in Lebanon, and we are surviving. Add to it the collapse of the institutions and the vacancy in the presidency. No government, no president, okay? No normally functioning parliament. So you can add a lot more to what you already mentioned. But again, it's not shying away from the reality. We know the risks. We are aware, and since long time we can say the country cannot take, and I can tell you now, the country scientifically, institutionally, economically, cannot take any more load. But it is taking it. Due to our ability to take much more load that we can take.
But why are you taking this load? You're allied.
Our nature. It is our nature, our DNA. You know, all our lives, since centuries, we go through wars and risks, and we manage to stay alive.
Let's explore this further. The reason that Lebanon is in a state of war is because Hezbollah is attacking Israel until the war in Gaza ends. I think you'd agree that this is not in Lebanon's best interest. No matter what your stance on the Palestinian people, Lebanon is the only other country right now, or the only country that is actively, militarily supporting the Palestinians, or in this case, Hamas. And that's not the Lebanese government, that's not the Lebanese army, that's obviously Hezbollah. Now, you'd agree that Hezbollah has a stronger military than the Lebanese military, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and your party, your bloc, the Free Patriotic Movement, is allied to Hezbollah, correct?
No.
Was allied to Hezbollah.
Was an understanding with Hezbollah.
Can you tell me more about that understanding?
Yeah, I can tell you a lot about all this. But let me say first that we don't agree that we are in a state of war now. We don't agree with the policy of Hezbollah to be aligned with the policy of Hamas or Sinwar in Gaza. We are with the Palestinians. We support the Palestinian cause. We want them to recuperate their land and their lives, but we don't consider that it is only the duty of Lebanon to do this. We can be part of a more comprehensive battle where Lebanon is part of it, but not bearing the load alone. Okay? But also, Lebanon is in a state of war not only now because of Hezbollah. Lebanon has went through wars before even the existence of Hezbollah. The civil war, there was no Hezbollah. When Israel attacked us and aggressed us tens of times, there was no Hezbollah. When Israel occupied the country in 1978 and in 1982, there was no Hezbollah. Hezbollah and the resistance was a reaction to the occupation, to the aggressions of Israel, which did not stop until now. Now this is something else, where we agree with Hezbollah in our memorandum of understanding that we adopted in 2006, is to defend Lebanon from Israeli occupation, from Israeli aggressions, from any terrorist aggression, yes. But we did not agree with Hezbollah that it is our duty as Lebanese to liberate Palestine. It is the duty of the Palestinians, and we support them.
So why is Hezbollah still fighting this war?
We don't agree, because he has a policy, what he called the unification of the fronts, which means that all the countries on the axis of the resistance are together in any fight. Okay? I can be happy, very much happy, that the Palestinians win the war. Okay? But I'm not happy that Lebanon alone is in this war. Why Syria is not? Egypt, Jordan, and many other. Even Iran is not directly implicated in the war.
True.
You know, I don't see Iranians now fighting in Gaza. They are supporting, and we are happy again. Okay? And definitely we don't want Israel to win over us, because it will occupy again our country and terrorize us and put its hands on our resources.
So you think if Hezbollah did not exist, because there's the other argument that Hezbollah is a deterrent for Israel occupying Lebanese territory. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yes. Because Hezbollah was the only regional and Arab faction in the region who was able to liberate an occupied land from Israel in 2000. And then in 2006, when Israel launched a war against us, Hezbollah was able to resist it. So this is where the deterrence force was created, and there was stability on our borders, on our southern borders, since 2006 till 2023. So 17 years of stability.
I spoke to one of your opponents earlier, and their argument is that 2006, the war wouldn't have happened if not for Hezbollah. So instead of acting as a deterrent, Hezbollah is arguably the cause of that war and the cause of Israeli aggression.
Let me tell you frankly, Israel was always behind the wars launched against us. Israel does not need a pretext to launch a war. They can use it for period of time. But again, if you look at the history of Israel towards Lebanon at least, we never aggressed Israel. The only time when a Lebanese faction started something was this time on October 8th. And this is why we don't agree with this.
Okay.
Because we had a very strong argument that Israel was always the aggressor. And we were in a position of defense.
But this changed on October 8th.
On October 8th, I can understand, people can understand this militarily, that it is a preemptive move from Hezbollah. But the problem got worse when they linked us that there is no ceasefire in Lebanon until there is a ceasefire in Gaza. What if there will be no ceasefire in Gaza? Should we stay in a state of war until Hamas and Israel finish their negotiations? And we are linked to the mood of Netanyahu and his political future and to the objective of Sinwar and to the access. No. Lebanon has other considerations to take.
Okay, so first, I need to just clarify. Would you consider Hezbollah as an ally?
Hezbollah is a Lebanese party with whom we have our agreements and disagreements.
Okay.
Very, very simple. We are in this position.
Okay, so you're saying it's a tricky position. They're not an ally, but they're not an enemy either. We just have an MOU.
And frankly, we don't consider, this MOU also is on hold. And we don't consider that any Lebanese party is an enemy. We cannot accept that we live together in this country. Lebanon is a melting pot. We cannot manage but to live together, and we have to accept each other and to get to know each other, understand each other. Okay, and this is where we blame Hezbollah that he could have done this in a much better, subtle way that can gather Lebanese. We need a safety network among us internally. We don't need more divisions internally where Israel or any other enemy can take advantage of it.
Okay, so does Hezbollah have Lebanon's best interest at heart or Iran's best interest at heart? Which one's more important to Hezbollah and Nasrallah?
You know, I consider that in the internal matters, they take the decision on their own. But externally, after linking us to this unification of fronts, they are putting others' interests in the front.
And
Not
in this case,
even if Lebanon will come victorious after this war and take benefits from the results of this war, okay? I'm happy to have this. I'll take it gladly because it will be put in our advantage, in our benefit. But what about the other disadvantages? We were able to avoid them or no? For example, the cost of war. Who will take it in charge? For example, we accept the cost of war if we are in a position of defense, if we are getting something in return for the country. If it is for the benefit of the country, well there's a price to pay and we pay it. But here where we have to have a balance and really measure it very carefully.
Okay. It just seems like it's a very tricky position that you're in. Hezbollah is obviously designated as a terrorist organization by the West. The Arab League removed that designation, I think it was last week.
There was never a designation by the Arab League, but whatever. Do you think that many of the countries who are designating Hezbollah as a terrorist, they don't talk to him? Now, there are no discussions between the US and Hezbollah?
There is?
Of course there is.
Direct communication?
Whether it is direct or indirect, and I know about both, but whatever it is.
There's both, yes?
I'm not saying there's both. I'm saying there were trials, I'm aware of them, it's only normal, but now the Western countries who talk to Hezbollah politically or at an intelligence level, why US can talk to Iran? Iran is not designated as a terrorist nation. How many Iranians are sanctioned? Individuals, companies, groups, the government, the Haras Thawri, the Revolutionary Guard, all its institutions. And they talk directly in Oman and so many other places. Why is this allowed, okay, for a Western country and for a Lebanese who share the same ground, the same state, the same future? We cannot talk together.
So then, it just kind of highlight the complexities. Why you are sanctioned by the US And the reasons they gave is corruption and affiliation to Hezbollah.
You believe it?
Let me
I
finish the
was
question.
sanctioned.
I'm gonna expand the question to kind of make the point you want to make, because I know what point you want to make. Because there's another, I think the head of the parliament, Mr. Nabih Berri, he was not sanctioned, but he's even closer to Hezbollah, and he's part of the same government that's been blamed with the corruption in Lebanon. So showing the complexity of politics in Lebanon, why were you sanctioned and why was Mr. Berri and others not sanctioned?
A good question, because they considered, the answer was that they considered that our political weight is more important. That's why they are sanctioning us, because we are making the difference. And what was the difference? Because we are not encircling Hezbollah internally, so to avoid a conflict or an internal war. But the main reason why I was sanctioned, it was clear that I don't need an evidence on this, and we have the evidence on this, that because of our relation with Hezbollah, they wanted us to go out publicly and declare that we are breaking with Hezbollah because on a certain moment, the US decided that we should do this. And we were afraid that this will cause a conflict. There was nothing mentioned about corruption, and I'm challenging. And I'm in the process of challenging the US administration to give any proof of corruption. There is none. And the declared reasons about corruptions are very, very untrue. Not to say,
but then why was Mr. Berri, who's very close to Hezbollah, why wasn't he sanctioned?
Well, this is the question.
What's your opinion?
My opinion is that we, the Free Patriotic Movement, are so much free that people and big powers don't like to treat with people who don't obey them.
Okay, so are you implying that, because that's something else that others have said, is that Mr. Berri is the connection between Hezbollah and the West?
Not only. I know he's a real ally. We call them here the duo.
Hezbollah, exactly. Both are Shiite, and they've been allies for a very long time.
But not only Mr. Berri, the speaker. Other Lebanese parties are in very, very close relation with Hezbollah, and they were not sanctioned. Why we were sanctioned? Because we made the difference we did not jeopardize our national unity.
So were you requested to do something by the West, by the US, that you refused before being sanctioned?
Yeah, exactly. I was asked to go publicly and declare that we have no more relations with Hezbollah.
And did they warn you that if that does not happen, they will sanction you?
Oh, very clear. And I'm talking here about the officials. I'm talking here about the State Secretary of the United States and about their ambassador and about a whole staff of people in the US Department of State. And this is very well known.
Could that be one of the reasons why your stance on Hezbollah has gradually shifted over the last few months?
No, because...
and years?
Not at all. It has shifted for two reasons. Because in our memorandum of understanding, we have an agreement on three things. Okay, one, the building of the state. We need to have a state of law.
Which doesn't seem to have happened.
We don't have it. And we consider that not enough efforts or no efforts were made or put in that direction, because the resistance, again, and the arms are a priority. Second, so this is one pillar that has gone. Second, the partnership between us as Lebanese. So we respect our share of power as equals in the institutions of the country. And also when the mandate of General Michel is terminated.
The former head of the former president and former head of the political party.
Hezbollah, they chose their candidate for the presidency, and they wanted to impose this on us, which we cannot accept. And three, which is the defense strategy, which is the Israeli confrontation, let's say, where we are with them against Israel. We are with the Palestinians against Israel in defense of our land, of our country, of our rights, but no more.
I understand. When was the last time you spoke to Mr. Nasrallah?
I guess it was, it was after the war of October 7th. It was maybe around October. It's the second half of October.
Is that the last time you spoke to him?
Yeah, directly.
Okay. And can you tell me more about that conversation?
Yeah, we had a very frank discussion as always. You know,
On a call or face to face?
No, it was on a call. You know, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah is a very wise man. You know, he knows very well what he wants, and you can, when you discuss with him, you discuss with. The discussion always makes sense. And our point of view was the worry we had, the concern we had, that we didn't want Lebanon to be dragged in a war.
Okay.
He had the same concern. He was not afraid that this will happen, and he assured me that he will do everything possible so not to allow this to happen.
But he also,
this was the main, and it was, of course, the discussion always about the presidency, because this is a priority for us. No state without a president, and we want a state of Lebanon.
That's another big problem. But going back to that conversation, I think Mr. Nasrallah is also in a very tricky situation. He's funded by Iran, and it's in Iran's best interest for Hezbollah to support Hamas, but it's in Lebanon's best interest for Hezbollah not to get involved. Is that a fair predicament that Mr. Nasrallah is in?
Yeah, I would say in their policy of unifying the fronts and standing together.
Oh, you're talking about Iranian allies?
The Iranian allies, the umbrella going from Iran to Iraq,
to the
Houthis,
in Iraq, yeah.
Syria, Lebanon, okay? So he wanted to avoid the war. I'm sure that he does not want war in Lebanon, a full-fledged war, you know.
To this day, he does not want war.
No, he does not want a war. Okay, and Israelis also don't want a war, or they cannot afford to have a war. They want it, but they cannot make it. Okay, he does not want a war because he is aware of the high cost of the war on Lebanon. Even if the cost is high on Israel, very high, but here again the relativity applies. Where is the cost higher? Okay, and the consequences of the war. So yes, I consider he wants to avoid the war, but at the same time he wants to secure the victory of Hamas over Israel.
Okay. Or at least secure a peace deal, which is what he's...
It's not in their, let me say, in their philosophy, the peace with Israel.
Not between Hezbollah and Israel, I mean between Hamas and Israel. And to the war, a ceasefire.
Nobody is expecting peace. It's a
ceasefire.
Cessation of hostilities or a ceasefire.
Ceasefire.
We, the Lebanese, in our, it's our government statement, where Hezbollah is part of it also, whether he agrees or no. We, the Lebanese, we are seeking stability in our country, in the region, prosperity for our country, but also to have a strong state which can oppose Israel, defend its territories from Israel, and who can seek that we want to have our rights.
Okay, so going back to the conversation you've had with Mr. Nasrallah, so you haven't spoken to him since the second half of October, not directly. Have you spoken to his group, Hezbollah, since then?
Yeah, we are still in contact.
What is Hezbollah's stance today? And how do they know that Israel will not get into a full-blown war with are they playing with fire, or is there direct communication or indirect communication between Hezbollah and Israel and some sort of understanding behind the scenes?
No.
Where you don't think there is?
I don't believe this. And frankly, these conspiracy theories, I'm not much into them.
But I think it's
even if at some points the enemies, sometimes they have. They meet somewhere.
They should.
Like meeting now of avoiding war. If not,
exactly,
the war would have been launched a long time ago. So I'm not there. And the position of Hezbollah is stated by Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, not by me. You can ask me about our position on what they believe. What makes them so sure is their force. They believe that they have enough force to avoid a confrontation to make the Israelis convinced that they cannot win a war over them. Because again, I can tell you, how is it possible after 9 months they are not being able, the Israelis, to have a complete control over Gaza, which is 340 square kilometers. It's like the area of Kisrwan right next to us.
Which is a small region in
against
Lebanon,
a
small
group
city.
who is much less powerful than Hezbollah. How can they win a war here over Hezbollah on 10,000 square kilometers?
Okay.
It's impossible.
Then, but what are your thoughts on the rhetoric from Israel? So you've got the Israeli military saying they're ready for an all-out war, and the Northern Command has approved operations operations for a war with Lebanon. Let me say, the Foreign Minister said, we are very close to the moment of decision to change the rules against Hezbollah and Lebanon. In an all-out war, Hezbollah will be destroyed, and Lebanon will be severely hit. And Hezbollah obviously had the drone footage of Haifa. It seems things are not heading in the right direction, and there could be two explanations. And just remember as well, Israel did declare that the intense phase of the war in Gaza has come to an end. And there's two theories here. Number one is they're getting close to a ceasefire, a peace deal if we're lucky. Number two is they're moving their equipment, their military forces up north, and they're preparing for a war with Hezbollah. That's why I asked you the question if there's communication, because either Hezbollah's playing with fire, or there is some sort of deal behind the scenes that is allowing Hezbollah to keep doing what they're doing, and knowing that there's certain red lines, there's rules of engagement that both parties don't cross, and as long as these rules are not broken, there's no full-blown war. There's some sort of agreement behind the scenes. Which one is it? Playing with fire or some sort of behind-the-scenes agreement? And I understand you're not speaking on behalf of Hezbollah. This is your personal opinion as someone that speaks to them.
First, I don't take anything lightly when said by the Israelis, especially from such a government, an extremist government. So I can tell you everything is possible, and everybody is playing with fire. Everybody, everybody thinks that he can control the fire, but nobody knows when things can go out of control, and that's where is our fear from a war. But logically speaking, everybody is aware of the cost of the war, and he would like to avoid it. That's what I consider. The Hezbollah are also inflicted with losses. the Lebanese properties, their own, and the Lebanese martyrs.
19,000 displaced in Lebanon, 60,000 in northern Israel, 25 deaths in Israel, 400 in Lebanon. That's between the skirmishes between Hezbollah and Israel.
But again, you don't take it like this. The war here is relative. The losses are relative. What would be the losses on the economy of Israel?
60,000 displaced in Israel. So
but not more than this. And here we are still talking. We are still talking on the northern part of the country of Israel. What about when this will have a larger scale? So the losses will be much higher.
If a full-blown war
and
does break out.
this what logically would say that everybody should work on avoiding the war.
Okay.
But I don't see, frankly, what such a deal, an under-the-table deal where things. Now, this is where I believe nobody knows what are the results. People are unfortunately awaiting and betting on the American elections, where with a Republican administration, things are different than with a Democratic administration. So this is where people will keep on playing with fire until things are clearer in the region.
Are you saying that I'm a big proponent of dialogue, and I try to achieve that in what I do around the world? And I think that all countries should have direct lines of communication, or at least indirect lines of communication, including Lebanon, which officially does not recognize the state of Israel. Lebanon is one of very few countries. There's only a few Arab countries and a few outliers that don't recognize the state of Israel. First, the question is, do you have any direct or indirect lines of communication with Israel?
No.
Is that for legal reasons?
For legal reasons, and because I'm convinced that this does not help. Our positions, are well known. We've always said, we want our rights. And then from within a bigger framework, Lebanon went into a peace initiative. We're not seeking wars, we're seeking peace. But how can you make peace with a country that always aggresses you? You can see what Israel did with the Palestinians. They can do the same with the Lebanese. And we have the right to be afraid of this. Where we always offered to have an understanding based on the rights, on the concept of rights, each one gets its right. And Israel always used a different logic, which is wars and force.
Do you, and you've talked about this before, you've said in 2017, as the foreign minister, you said, I don't deny Israel has a right to exist. We are not blind. We are people who want to live with others. I agree with that statement. Israel recognizes Lebanon's right to exist. Most of the world recognizes Israel's right to exist, whatever your stance is on the war in Gaza.
And the Palestinians too.
But talking about Israel.
Yeah, the Palestinians, they do, maybe not all of them.
Oh, recognize
They
Israel's right to
recognize
exist.
that they want, when we talk of the two-state solution, what does it mean?
Exactly.
That you have Israel with its existence and Palestine with its existence.
So do you recognize Israel's right to exist?
I recognize Israel when Israel makes real peace and gives us back our rights. You know, we have occupied land. We have Palestinian refugees since 1948 in Lebanon. We have a continuous aggression from Lebanon on our sovereignty by all means. We have somehow some kind of seizure or control on our natural resources. And you add on top of them lately, we have the problem of the Syrian displaced in Lebanon, which is partly related to the conflict in the region.
Two questions, sir. First, can't you have those disagreements with another state, a state of Israel? Can't you recognize, they recognize your right to exist despite Hezbollah being in Lebanon, despite the current conflict, despite the disagreements when it comes to land. Can't Israel, can't you and can't Lebanon also recognize the state of Israel and have those disagreements? Or does Hezbollah and Iran's, you understand, you know where I'm going with this question, Hezbollah's influence in Lebanese politics, which it puts everyone in a tricky position, rightly or wrongly?
I don't accept that Hezbollah nor Iran dictate on us our policy. You know, we have our thinking, where we agree with them on certain issues and we disagree. On this specifically, I agree as part of the Lebanese, when the Lebanese reach a place where we say we got our rights in coordination with the other Arab countries, where also Syria has its problems, where you have the occupied land of Shib'a farms, okay? So when this is, for me, done in a seek for stability and peace in the region.
Okay. And I will press for the last time on this question, because I know it's a very difficult question.
But I answered you very clearly.
I understand.
Okay, you can ask it in
so
many ways. I have no problem. We don't have any complex. With this Israel, you cannot have peace, as long as Israel is using its force to kill us. Okay, when Israel, will change and accept that it will live peacefully and give us back our rights and to the Palestinians and to the Syrians, then comprehensively and all of us, we would go into what we did in Beirut in the peace initiative.
In the maritime agreement with Israel, the agreement did mention the state of Israel. Isn't that?
Where?
You can correct me if I'm wrong. The maritime agreement that Lebanon had with Israel, was there a mention? And I was interviewing someone earlier.
Let me tell you the truth. This is an example of how things can be. This could have turned into violence or into negotiations, and it was solved with negotiations. It was not a pacifying or, let's say, a normalization issue. No. It was finding a solution to a problem. It was not within a normalization process. But this can tell us how the Lebanese, including Hezbollah, can go this way in violence and war, or this way in stability and prosperity.
I want to give you my humble opinion on something I've kind of learned as I researched the political situation in Lebanon, is that I empathize with politicians. There's a lot I criticize as well in how the country is. But I think the situation that Lebanon is in with foreign interference, and I think the system is broken, two militaries, I just don't understand how any politician, including yourself, and this is me speaking, I'm not speaking on your behalf, I don't understand how, even if you believe in Israel's right to exist, again, I'm saying generally speaking, you cannot say that. It's just when there's a military that's more powerful than the Lebanese military, that is currently at war with Israel, that does not recognize Israel's right to exist, that has two incentives. One is Iran's, one is Lebanon's. Yes, my personal opinion. When you've had years of assassinations, I was speaking to a leader of another political party that is, an opponent of yours, They've had multiple family members either assassinated or attempts on their life. You've had an attempt on your life. And a lot of the fingers point towards Hezbollah. He pointed explicitly in that interview, his finger towards Hezbollah. Hezbollah was held responsible in the international court for the assassination of then Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. You cannot deny whether you support Hezbollah or not. You cannot deny, and I actually would like your commentary on this, there is a level of fear in this country, and there's a level of hesitation on how far any politician can go in expressing their true beliefs and their true opinions. Because even though Lebanon is a democracy cannot function with two militaries. I would love your thoughts on my opinion.
Yeah, of course. First, I am going clearly and publicly expressing my thoughts and my beliefs. I'm not afraid of anybody, okay? Because the fear, either you have something to be afraid of because you know I'm not a traitor, okay? I have nothing to be afraid of from Hezbollah, okay? I did not deal with the enemy Israel, okay? I never treated with a foreign country against my citizens, okay? So I have nothing to be afraid of. And of course, my basic position is that we want the Lebanese army to be the strongest on the sole force on our land. Of course, this is basic. And we don't want any other armed group to be existent, whether it is Hezbollah or any Lebanese party. But we came back to Lebanon after we were, put out of the system.
You're talking about the exile of Mr.
Yes,
Michel.
of President On. We came with this reality where Hezbollah came as a reaction to the occupation, the resistance, okay? And unfortunately, the Western countries are not helping our Lebanese army sufficiently to be able to create that balance of power with Israel. So also this lack of enough support, they are supporting it, but not enough to create that balance. So I'm not justifying at all. I justify the self-defense. I justify the resistance. But I don't justify the normal existence of an illegal arm, but the army. Okay? So this is our principled position. This is where we want to get. And this is why we were the first, the Free Patriotic Movement, in 2006, to put in our memorandum of understanding with Hezbollah that we need a defense strategy whereby the arms of Hezbollah can be integrated in it to defend Lebanon, Lebanon. So our basic position is very clear. But now we are in a situation where you have to choose, okay, between Israel, okay, who is attacking you, and Hezbollah, who is defending the land. Who would you choose? Your citizens or a foreign country?
And it's important to point out. It's important to point out as well. Hezbollah does have a lot of support in Lebanon. They've got, I think they're the biggest party in the government. Are they still the biggest?
No, they are not the biggest
bloc?
party in the government, but they were the party who got the highest number of votes.
To this day?
In the last elections.
So it's important to take that into consideration.
That's a point where you cannot accept that you describe a big part of your population as terrorists. How can you accept it?
I think it's not the population.
That's why
I think it's
some countries, the US, were angry from me because, of course, I cannot accept to say that a huge part of our population, all of them are terrorists.
Okay, so I've got these two questions are my favorite. If you've spoken to Mr. Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and you have a line of communication with Hezbollah right now, I'll make it three questions. The first one, what would you say is the biggest misconception in the West about Hezbollah?
Describing them as terrorists.
Okay.
While they are defending them, even if there are acts that can be described as such with time. The US made peace. Do we need to say with who? With the Taliban lately? Taliban did not make any terrorist attacks or suicidal attacks or military attacks on the US. We can disagree with them. I can disagree that I don't like to see any American citizen or American soldier killed in our country. Or I don't want wars. But I can understand, that someone would be defending his country, and any kind of this, it will be adjusted in the future. Why? Because the US and Hezbollah and Iran will be talking together and finding a solution.
Okay, an argument that was made by the leader of another political party, who is staunchly opposing for many years Hezbollah, is that Hezbollah was responsible for a lot of the assassinations in Lebanon, for many opponents of Hezbollah and Syria. And I'm sure you remember that period where everyone was on edge, and every few weeks or months there's an explosion and another politician was killed or journalist was killed. Do you think Hezbollah, rightly or wrongly, I don't want your opinion on whether it's right or wrong, would you say Hezbollah was involved in those assassinations?
You know, I can say that I am against this. I cannot accept at all that any Lebanese would kill any other Lebanese, especially if it is a political assassination. Mm-hmm. Okay, there were no proofs until now because, frankly, the accusations were always politicized. And this, if it was not politicized, and we saw what happened, you know, after 2005, of course we condemn this.
Okay,
we
so
don't accept it.
But you don't, do you point the finger at anybody, or you say you don't know?
I cannot, because I see the conspiracy, how big it is, and how those crimes were directed politically. They were directed in a way to criminalize Hezbollah, to encircle them, and to try to
so there's two arguments
exterminate them.
One argument is that Israel was behind them to cause, as far as a civil war in Lebanon, and the other argument is that it was Hezbollah. Would you say, and with
in
the backing
both
of Syria,
cases we condemn them.
And do you think both cases are plausible? You just don't know which one it is?
Everything is plausible, you
Okay.
know, and maybe a combination of all of this.
Okay, fair answer. Now my two favorite questions. The first one is, if Mr. Hassan Nasrallah was sitting here right now, you're having a private conversation, what would you tell him?
I would tell him what I told him the last time I saw him, not we talked over the phone, that you have your priority of preserving the arms of Hezbollah and having the resistance powerful enough to defend the country. And we have our priority of building the state. Those two priorities don't have to contradict. They can complement each other. So we can work together on building our country, a strong country, defended by a strong army, where Hezbollah can be integrated in this position of defending the country. The building of the state does not eliminate Hezbollah and the resistance should not be a threat to the state of Lebanon.
Now, legally you're not allowed to communicate with Israeli politicians, correct?
Right.
Or even Israeli citizens. I remember when we do our show, whenever we had Lebanese guests on, we could not have any Israeli guests on for legal purposes. But I always, try my best to bring dialogue, whether it's Palestinians and Israelis together on stage. We've had that. I remember one time we had a Palestinian journalist and an Israeli Defense Force member on stage together speaking. One of the most emotional moments we've seen. On the show that we have, we've got Israelis that watch the show. We've got Lebanese citizens. We've got Palestinians. And of course, people from around the world. What would be your message to anyone in Israel and Lebanese politicians if they were sitting right here?
Stop the killing. We get used to accept the other, no matter how much she is different than you. We are in a country, in a region where we are different in religion, in culture, in society, and our way of perceiving things. Okay? So we can all find a way to live together peacefully, stop the killing, and accept the other who is different from
And if I told you, if I'm Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I told you, Mr. Bassil, we would accept to stop all hostilities with Lebanon, figure out the issue on the borders, in return for the disarming of Hezbollah and merging Hezbollah, which is something you've said you stand for, merging Hezbollah with the Lebanese army. I know I'm simplifying a more complex issue, but if that's my stance as Prime Minister Netanyahu, I have the ability to sit with you publicly. What would be your stance? What would be your response?
I would tell him, go solve your problems first with the Israelis and then with the Americans and with the courts in Israel, and then don't preach us about how we want to live together.
So I'm trying to reach a peace deal.
You know what he did, this man, to humanity, okay, can not be forgivable.
Okay, let's say it's a new
Okay.
prime minister. Forget Prime Minister Netanyahu. If it's a new prime minister, in a few
Okay,
months, how would you reach that deal?
I will not be in a position to talk to him like this if we don't have, really a peace deal made with the Arab countries. But I would advise anyone, if really they want to preserve our ability to live together in this region, they should stop this logic of force, or else Israel won't be able to exist in this region with this logic. They cannot continue. The killing is turning against them now.
And you've just got the chicken and egg problem. Should Hezbollah disarm first, or should... How do you begin reaching peace with Israel?
Justice. People should be treated in a just way.
But that's very vague.
No,
What's something practical that can happen now?
There are occupied lands, okay, and there is aggression from one side against the other. When you give them back, you will be in a position then to talk equally. But there is no chosen race over the other. Okay? When you accept that you are equal to the other, and you can talk and you can accept him, then you accept the idea of justice. Until then, you are not in a position to preach us.
Well, Mr. Bassil, you've answered all questions, including the tough ones. I know I've put you on the spot with a few questions that are very difficult, considering the political landscape here in Lebanon, but I appreciate you having me in your home, and I appreciate you doing this interview, considering you don't do many. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. You are welcome.